Hey, I'm Shane. We're in Shane's Law. I'm here today with Ashley, one of the attorneys here at Shane's Law. We're talking about one of our recent client victories where Ashley got a great result for this particular client. Let's dig into the weeds a little bit and find out a little bit more about it. Ashley, tell us about this case.
So FH was sitting on the highway, traffic comes to a stop, so she does as well. Person behind her not paying attention, ends up partially rear-ending her, partially sideswiping her, trying to avoid the collision last minute, but still clips her and gets the whole side of her car in the process at roughly 45 miles an hour. So it was a pretty big hit.
I was going to say, so was it one of these side swipes where there's some paint scratch, basically paint rub, or was there actual damage to the side of the car?
No, there was damage to the back through the side of her car.
So
he just kind of pushed it up and crushed along the edge.
Crushed that whole side? Okay.
Yeah.
That's a serious impact. And it was on the driver's side, you said?
No, it was on the passenger side.
Okay, that's a little bit better, I guess.
But in this scenario, because her foot was so steadily on the brake, when the initial impact at the back jolted her forward, she ended up with a pretty severe ankle injury.
What happened there? So she was braced. Obviously, she just stopped. Was probably pressing on the brake pedal. The impact hits. What happens to her ankle?
So she had injuries to her neck, back and wrist and ankle at first. With some treatment, the back and neck resolved, but we end up like a year in, we're trying to figure out what's wrong with her ankle. She still can't bear weight on it. She's been through physical therapy. Multiple doctors sent her to physical therapy, so it's been tried and failed 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, and that's one of the issues we run into sometimes is some doctors like PT a lot and keep sending you to that thinking it's going to fix it rather than run some diagnostic tests or do something more extreme.
And I will say that's one thing our office does differently that I really like. We're not just here to fight the insurance company. To me, you're not better. So we need to keep asking why and figuring this out. So we did ultimately send her to a third specialist who decided to do an MRI with contrast because the prior MRI she had done, you couldn't really see anything.
Gotcha. So she had the MRI. But
yeah, she had all the imaging you could get done, but it wasn't revealing anything.
But none of the dye.
And you don't really hear of an exploratory scope of the ankle. It's way too small of a joint. Right. So they end up doing it with contrast, and they're finally able to see the tears and some of the fractures the smallest bones you have around your ankle.
So she still had fractures a year later, probably because she kept putting weight on it, would be my guess.
Yeah, it was mostly the scarring. There were a few things out of place, though, because it needed to be set right from the tears, things kind of misaligning. So ultimately, it took us over 2 years, but we finally figured out what kind of surgery she needed, and we were able to get it done.
Wow. Okay. And how did she recover from that?
She's still recovering. The other upside of her case was it was built so strong to show that there was an issue, and the fact that she was willing to keep complaining and seeing doctors and made it clear that, hey, she's hurt. It's not like we gave up 6 months later, tried again, where we might get more pushback from the insurance company. We didn't even have all her records in-house when we sent the demand out for the $100,000 policy, kind of just outlining briefly what was going on. Within 30 days, we had the check.
Okay.
So she's finishing up physical therapy. She still has some pain, but it is not what it was.
And you said we got the $100,000 check, so I'm guessing that was all the insurance that was available?
Yes. We exhausted everything. Wish there was more to go after in her scenario, just to make sure that she gets that 100%. But we got what we could.
How did she feel? Was she happier about finally figuring out what was going on and getting better, or was she more happy about the money?
Figuring out what was going on.
Yeah.
Because it does get to a point where it's like, am I crazy? We have seen 2 different specialists now, and they're all saying we can't see anything wrong with it. There was still some swelling, so they would agree, something's not right, but
they're not acting like it's a big deal, and they're not telling her why.
Sending her back to physical therapy when that was just inflaming it more.
And she, like you say, people then begin to doubt, is it all in my mind? Is there anything?
And then you try and just live that way, you make this new normal, and we didn't want that for her, so had a conversation about, let's just give this other specialist a try, let's give this imaging one last try. So I think there was just relief to actually have an answer as to what was wrong and get it fixed.
Well, it sounds like she was super lucky to have you as an advocate, not just an advocate against the insurance company, but also to keep her in the game, basically, and encourage her to continue going and finding solutions. So great job. I think she was lucky to have you. For our listeners, hit like and subscribe to see more client victories from Shane Smith Law. In pain, call Shane, 980-999-9999.
In pain, so I call Shane, 980-999-9999. In pain, call Shane.